Whoa, from the outside, our home looked like a Southern Living cover. Inside, I was starting to disappear. Before I tell you how I found out the man I married was living a double life, let me know where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if you believe lies always surface, no matter how deep they're buried. It was late spring in Austin. The roses I'd planted along the white picket fence were just starting to open. Soft pinks and yellows brushing up against the morning air. The lawn stayed trimmed like clockwork, the shutters stayed a polite navy, and our doorbell even chimed in a pleasant tone. Not too harsh. People slowed their cars when they passed. I know, because I used to do that too. Back before this was my house. Before Thomas leaned down and whispered, "You deserve soft light, Caroline," while the real estate agent fumbled with the keys. I'd never had someone say I deserved beauty. Not in those exact words. Now, 2 years later, I had the house. I had the marble counters and the powder blue guest bathroom. I had a husband who kissed me on the forehead every morning before leaving for work, even if he barely looked at me while doing it. I also had an unsettling quiet in my chest that I couldn't explain. Thomas worked in corporate real estate. He wore pressed shirts and muted ties. He liked routine and disliked clutter. His shoes were always shined. Our home reflected that. Polished, symmetrical, always 2 degrees cooler than comfortable. I used to find peace in that. Lately, though, it felt more like a museum I wasn't supposed to touch. He'd leave around 7:15 every morning. I'd make coffee, open the windows, and water the roses. Sometimes I'd play one of Allison's voicemails while I wiped down the counters. She always left long ones, rambling about her boys or the new dog or the scandal in her book club. It made me feel tethered to something real. Something warm. Because the warmth here, it had faded. At first I thought it was just a rough patch. After all, the IVF had taken so much out of us. 2 failed rounds, 1 chemical pregnancy, and 1 miscarriage that left me in a hospital bed under the sharp glow of fluorescent lights. Thomas held my hand through it all. He brought me socks and told the nurses to dim the lights. But afterward, something in him shifted. Slowly, quietly. He still kissed me. Still said, "I'll be late tonight," with that even tone. But his phone began to stay face down. His laughter stopped reaching his eyes. He started smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. I told myself he was just tired. I told myself stress shows up differently for everyone. And yet, that Wednesday, something small, something utterly ordinary, cracked the story I'd been telling myself. He walked through the front door with a smile and a bouquet in his hand. "Lavender," he said. "You like these, right?" I froze. Lavender makes me sneeze. Always has. He knew that. Years ago, when we were dating, he'd once tossed an entire sachet out of a hotel drawer, just because it made my nose wrinkle. I stared at the stems in his hand, violet and fragrant. He was still smiling. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded and took the bouquet. "I'll put them in water," I said. I didn't sneeze. Not until he left the room. I placed the lavender in the tall glass vase by the window, the one we got from a weekend trip to Fredericksburg. I filled it with cold water, trimmed the stems like I'd seen in those YouTube tutorials, and arranged the blooms just so, turning the tallest one slightly to the left. It was silly, really. Doing all that for flowers I couldn't even breathe around, but I didn't say a word to him. Not about the lavender, not about the late nights. Not about how I'd started waking up before dawn, just to stand in the kitchen and listen to the silence that used to feel safe. That night, he had a drink with dinner. 1 drink. Neat bourbon, a habit he picked up when we got married. Said it helped him switch gears between work and home. I sipped my tea and nodded when he talked about a zoning project in North Austin. He didn't ask about my day. He rarely did anymore. I told him anyway. About the roses. About the neighbor's cat leaving paw prints on the porch again. He smiled politely, like a teacher indulging a child. Then his phone buzzed, and he excused himself to take it in the study. The door clicked shut. I sat alone with our plates. There was a time, not long ago, when we'd eat with our knees touching under the table, when his hand would find mine while we talked about nothing in particular. Now, I could barely remember the last time he reached for me without needing something. The next morning, I stood by the window watching the roses again. My tea had gone cold, and the vase beside me looked beautiful. Out of place but beautiful. That's when the thought came. Not a scream. Not even a whisper. Just a quiet sentence that slipped through me like a leaf falling on still water. This isn't love anymore. It's a schedule. I shook it off. Made the bed. Folded the towels. Listened to another voicemail from Allison. This one about a leaky roof and how her youngest drew a spaceship on the dining wall with a Sharpie. I almost laughed. Almost. That afternoon, I cleaned the guest room even though no one was coming. I just needed something to do. Something that didn't feel like waiting. Because that's what most of my days had become. A kind of polite waiting. For him to call. For dinner to start. For something to shift. And then, something did. Around midnight, I rolled over in bed and realized Thomas wasn't there. The bathroom door was closed, the light spilling out underneath in a soft line. I wouldn't have noticed, but there was a sound, faint. A voice. Not his. My heart didn't pound, it didn't race. It just tightened. I slipped quietly out from under the covers and padded to the door, careful not to let the floorboards creak. The voice was too low to make out words, but I could tell it wasn't on speaker. It was hushed. Urgent. And familiar in a way I couldn't place. I waited. Listened. Then the water turned on. The door unlocked. When I opened it, Thomas was drying his hands with the towel. He looked up and smiled like nothing had happened. Couldn't sleep, he said. Had a late call with a client in Tokyo. Time zones are brutal. His phone sat on the counter, face down as always. Oh, I said. Didn't realize you were still working. Just wrapping up. He replied, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead. His lips were cool. We climbed back into bed like nothing was wrong. Like two actors returning to their marks, waiting for the curtain to rise again. Thomas turned to his side almost instantly, back facing me, breath slowing into the rhythm of someone pretending to be asleep. I stared at the ceiling, counted the blades of the fan. 5, always 5. My fingers brushed against the sheets, cool, still crisp from yesterday's laundry. I thought about Tokyo. How the client's name hadn't come up in his usual schedule. How Thomas hated overnight calls and always complained when they were scheduled. But most of all, I thought about the way he smiled. Like nothing was wrong, like he knew something I didn't. I lay still, trying to summon the comfort I used to find in our bed. It wasn't there. Instead, a strange thought crept in. Not panic, not betrayal. Just this hollow, growing awareness I'm here. And somehow I'm not needed. The next morning he left early. Said he had site visits on the east side. I kissed his cheek like always, watched him walk to his car. He waved from the driver's seat. The same wave he gave our neighbors. Professional. Pleasant. Distant. When he pulled out of the driveway, I walked straight to his home office. I'd never been the type to snoop. I prided myself on that. But that morning, I didn't feel like his wife. I felt like someone investigating a version of herself she no longer recognized. His desk was organized, too organized. Cables tied. Notebooks stacked. The only thing out of place was a red folder tucked into the bottom drawer. Inside, nothing scandalous. Project notes. Receipts from hotel stays. Mostly work-related. Until one page stopped me. A dinner receipt from a bistro we used to go to years ago. 2 entrees. 2 glasses of wine. A shared dessert. Date stamped. 3 weeks ago. Time stamped 8:21 p.m. That same night he told me he was working late on a permit appeal. My stomach tightened. I could have told myself it was a colleague. I could have told myself anything, really. But I didn't. That afternoon, I returned to the roses. I sat on the porch with my tea, watching their heads bob slightly in the breeze. I tried to imagine what it would feel like to ask him. To confront him. To hear the truth. Instead, I pruned a dead bloom. Cut it clean off the stem. Watched it fall without a sound. That evening, I made lemon chicken and roasted asparagus, his favorite. He came home on time, kissed my cheek, washed his hands without being asked. We ate, he talked. I nodded. But something in me had shifted. He didn't notice. After dinner, he left his phone on the kitchen counter while he watered the backyard. For the first time in our marriage, I picked it up. It was locked. Of course it was. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at my own reflection in the oven door. I used to feel like his partner. Equal. Loved. But that night I felt like an audience member, in a show I didn't buy tickets for. Did you ever ignore your gut because love told you to? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading. When Allison called, she didn't ask how I was. She didn't start with small talk or weather or, "How's the garden?" She said, "I think I saw Thomas with someone else." If you've ever found something in someone's bag that changed everything, you're not alone. Stick with me. It was Thursday. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish. The sink was dry. The light slanted across the kitchen tile in neat, quiet lines. I was folding towels when the phone rang, and I almost didn't pick up. Allison. She didn't breathe for a second. Then, "Don't panic, okay? That's always how it starts." The preface before the unraveling. "I was in San Antonio yesterday," she said. "That new cafe by the river walk. Pine plus Palm, the one with the glass walls and the weird chairs." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I saw Thomas there. He was with someone. A woman. She had blonde hair, shoulder length, kind of messy. They were sitting close. Like, close. The words hung, not sharp, just suspended. "Did he see you?" I asked. "No. I was across the patio." "But Caroline," he touched her hand. I stood still, towel half folded. Outside, the wind moved the rose bushes just slightly. Like they were listening too. Maybe it was work. I offered, before I could stop myself. "Maybe he has clients in San Antonio." Allison was quiet. "I don't know," she said. "I just thought you should know." We hung up not long after. She didn't push. She never did. That was what I loved about her. She gave you space, but she also gave you truth, even when it burned. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing my hair like everything was fine. Thomas came in around 10:30, loosened his tie. Looked tired but not guilty. "Long day?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just the usual. Meetings ran late." I didn't mention Allison. I didn't mention San Antonio. Instead, I said, "Do you ever get bored?" He looked at me then, not sharply, just surprised. "Bored of what?" I smiled, small. "Of me. Of this. The routine." He leaned down and kissed the top of my head like a habit. "You're imagining things," he said gently. He turned off the light, got in bed, and within minutes, his breathing slowed. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I wasn't sure what I was imagining anymore. 2 days later, Thomas came home early with an unexpected smile and a carry-out bag from our favorite Thai place. "I thought we could use a change of pace," he said, setting it down on the counter. "Also, how do you feel about New Orleans?" I blinked. "For what?" "A weekend getaway. Just us." "You've been a little tense lately." He smiled like it was an inside joke. "A change of pace," he repeated, squeezing my hand. I nodded slowly, matching his tone, matching his warmth. But something inside me tugged sideways. Later that evening, while he showered, I packed. Nothing extravagant. Just comfortable jeans, my favorite soft blue cardigan, 2 books I likely wouldn't touch. And yet, I kept circling the suitcase like I'd forgotten something. I went to his side of the closet, looking for the charger I'd lent him earlier in the week. I didn't find it there, so I tried his briefcase. He always left it latched, but not locked. Always tidy. Always compartmentalized, like him. There, under a folder labeled Quarterlies Q2 and a small notepad, was a different file. Blue, unlabeled on the front, and thinner than the others. I opened it. Inside, I saw my name. Fulham Caroline Parker, Dobie 0203 1988. Austin Mental Wellness Center. My heart didn't race. It just slowed, like something inside me was trying not to panic before it understood. I flipped the first page. A report. Neatly typed. The kind of paperwork a psychiatrist might file after a session. Only I had never been there. Delusional tendencies. Inconsistent perception. Early stage dissociative disorder. My hand trembled, just slightly. I turned another page. More notes. Descriptions. Diagnoses that felt eerily tailored, like someone had described me from a distance, with all the wrong light. At the corner of the last page, faint and smudged, was a lipstick mark. Pale rose. Definitely not mine. I closed the file slowly, placed it back exactly where I found it, re-fastened the latch. In the bathroom, the water shut off. I zipped my suitcase without making a sound. Thomas came out of the shower with a towel draped around his shoulders, humming something low and familiar, maybe an old Eagles song. "You already packed?" he asked, noticing the suitcase by the bed. I smiled. A small, practiced smile. Figured it would save time in the morning. He nodded. "That's my girl," he said, ruffling his damp hair with one hand while reaching for his cologne with the other. I watched him spray it behind his neck. 3 short bursts, like always. I remembered when that scent used to make me feel safe. We went to bed early that night. He reached for me, his arm heavy over my hip, and I let him. I counted the seconds between his breaths. 30, 2 minutes later, his breathing steadied. I slipped out from under the covers, walked barefoot into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water I didn't drink. I stood at the window, staring out at the dim porch light and the black lawn beyond it. My name, on a diagnosis I never received. Filed by a clinic I'd never seen. He wasn't trying to fix us. He was trying to build a version of me no one would believe. A ghost wife. I pressed my palm flat to the counter and whispered, to no one. He wants to make me disappear. I didn't cry. I just went back to the bedroom, opened my drawer, and took out the small leather-bound notebook I hadn't written in since 2020. I flipped to a blank page and wrote day 1. Whatever came next, I needed to remember every step. He wasn't planning to fix us. He was preparing to erase me. If someone showed you proof of betrayal, would you confront them or collect more? Comment A for confront, B for observe. The highway blurred beneath the tires, a silver ribbon cutting through the stillness of Louisiana flatland. The car's odd C hissed softly. Too cold for my liking. But I didn't adjust it. Thomas had one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the radio dial, scrolling through classic rock stations like he was looking for a mood he didn't quite feel. We hadn't spoken in miles. Just before the exit, he said, "Let's stop here. Need gas?" I nodded. The sign read Bayou Stop Gas, faded red letters, paint peeling at the edges like old regret. We pulled in beside Pump 2. There was no music, no other cars. Just cicadas, buzzing so loud it made the silence feel personal. "Get us some water," Thomas asked. "I'll fill the tank." His voice was casual. Too casual. I pushed the door open and stepped out. The sun hit hard, thick, heavy heat that made my skin itch. I walked past the pump and toward the store, glass door streaked with the prints of 100 hands. That's when I saw him, a young man, maybe 25, maybe younger, stood just outside the side door, wiping his palms on a rag. His coveralls were half-zipped, oil-stained, the name patch reading Ethan. He looked up when I passed, eyes a shade too knowing for a stranger. I nodded politely. He nodded back. As I reached for the handle, I felt something graze my hand. A folded note. I looked down. It wasn't slick or neat, just a torn piece of receipt paper, smudged with black grease. 3 words, "Don't go back. He's lying to you." My fingers trembled, just slightly. I turned around. Ethan had disappeared around the side of the building. Inside, the store was dim, cool, humming with the soft whir of a soda fridge, the smell of stale chips and rubber tires. I moved toward the water cooler, but my feet paused. Ethan reappeared at the end of the aisle and motioned. Small, quick. Toward the back. Instincts I had silenced for years suddenly screamed. I followed him. He opened the supply door just wide enough for me to slip in. It smelled of gasoline and damp cardboard. "I know you don't know me," he said softly, "but I need you to listen." I nodded. I didn't trust him, but I didn't trust anyone else more. 3 weeks ago. He said. Your husband came through here with another man. Said something weird. Called someone his real wife. Said this trip would end things clean. I froze. Ethan looked at me, serious, calm. He also mentioned paperwork. Hospital stuff. Said it'd all be sorted soon, if you just stayed quiet. I felt the cold air press against the back of my neck. I tasted metal in my mouth. I'm not crazy. I whispered. Ethan's voice didn't change. I don't think you are. I think he wants you to believe you are. He reached behind a stack of Coke crates, pulled out a set of keys. There's an old Chevy parked behind the bait shed. Take it. Take the back road out. He won't see you. I didn't speak for a few seconds. The keys in Ethan's hand made a soft metallic jingle, almost absurd in how casual it sounded. Like this was normal. Like offering someone an exit from their own life was just another errand. Why are you doing this? I asked. His eyes didn't shift. Because no one else did. There was no anger in his voice. Just something weightier. Like someone who'd seen women leave too late, or not leave at all. I looked down at the keys. They had a red rubber tag marked, Unit 3. The kind of tag you'd find on a motel spare. My hand hovered. Through the thin wall, I could hear the beep of the gas pump, the faint slam of a car door. I looked back at Ethan. Is it unlocked? He nodded. Tank's full. I top it off once a week. I stared at the concrete floor. The seams where rain must have dried and left pale veins of mud. I imagined Thomas walking in here. His voice low, maybe joking with someone about clean endings. Like I was a project he hadn't finished. And then I imagined what he'd do if he walked in now. I took the keys. Ethan exhaled like he hadn't been sure I would. He stepped aside, motioned toward a door I hadn't noticed behind a rack of windshield wipers. Back exit leads behind the dumpster. Chevy's to the left. You'll hear crickets before you see it. I turned to go, but paused.
Thank you.
He didn't say anything. Just gave a nod that said go before you regret it. I moved fast, staying low, the old door creaking as it opened into blinding sunlight. I shielded my eyes. Cicadas and crickets blurred together in a wall of sound. There it was, the truck, a dark green Chevy, older model, a bit rusted at the fenders, but real, solid. A thing that could carry me forward. I opened the door. It groaned. But it opened. Inside, it smelled like engine grease and lemon air freshener. There was a pack of gum in the console and a faded map wedged under the visor. I slid in, left the door open, and reached for the ignition. And then, Caroline. His voice. From somewhere near the front of the store. My hands froze. Caroline, where are you? His voice rang out again, closer now. Caroline. It wasn't panicked. It was measured, the kind of tone someone uses when they want to sound calm so they can catch you off guard. I pulled the door shut quietly, holding my breath. The cicadas didn't care. They kept buzzing like background static to a horror movie. Through the side mirror, I could see a sliver of the parking lot. No sign of him yet. But he was there. I could feel it. My fingers found the ignition. It clicked once. Then again. And then the engine turned, a low rumble beneath me, like something waking up after too long a sleep. I didn't give myself time to hesitate. I pressed the gas, rolling the truck gently past the bait shed, past the edge of the dumpster, wheels crunching over gravel as I reached the side road. Caroline! He shouted louder now. But I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I already knew what I'd see. His face would be blank with surprise, or worse. Smiling. Smiling like a man who believed he still had the upper hand. I took the curve onto the Bayou Road like I'd done it 100 times. Even though I hadn't. Hands firm on the wheel. Heart steady, not racing. Because this wasn't panic. This was motion. And motion was mine again. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I already knew what I'd see. What would you do if a stranger handed you a way out? Trust them. Or run in the opposite direction. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, or shake, or call anyone just yet. I sat on the edge of a motel bed in a room that smelled faintly of Lysol and mildew, the hum of the ADOS cutting through everything else. The walls were that pale yellow you only see in places that don't expect people to stay long. Ethan had dropped me off out front, told the desk lady my name was Claire Abbott. She didn't even blink. It was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday where no one cares if you disappear. The first thing I did was download a legal documentation app. Not Yelp, not Venmo. A legal app. I typed it in with shaky fingers and hit install. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. But I knew this, I wasn't going to just vanish. The app had a feature called Vault. I opened it, tapped Record Audio. Then I sat there, staring at the motel's floral curtain, and whispered the whole story. Every detail. The flowers he brought that made me sneeze. The file in his briefcase. The blue folder with my name on it. But not my handwriting. Not my truth. I told the app what he'd said to Ethan. What he hadn't said to me. I didn't use my voice loudly. But I used it clearly. Later that night, I called Allison. The line picked up fast. Too fast. "Where are you?" she whispered. "In Baton Rouge," I said. "I'm okay." There was silence on her end. The kind that's full of relief and horror all at once. "I need someone," I said. "Not a therapist. Not a friend. I need someone who understands how people like Thomas operate." She didn't hesitate. "Nathan Brooks." "Ooh. He helped my cousin during her divorce. White collar, high profile, hush-hush type cases. He doesn't advertise, but he works fast." I sat up. "Can you connect me?" I already texted him. Of course she had. Allison had always moved 3 steps ahead of me, even when we were teenagers dodging curfews. Nathan Brooks didn't look like a lawyer. No tie. No briefcase. Just a navy polo shirt, clean jeans, and a face that looked like it didn't have time for small talk. He picked a table near the window of a quiet cafe off Perkins Road, the kind of place where no one asked questions if you stayed too long over a single cup of iced tea. I arrived 5 minutes early. He was already there. "Caroline," he said, standing but not offering a handshake. "Have a seat." There were manila folders spread out on the table. Neatly stacked. No names on the tabs. Just a navy pen perfectly aligned beside them. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't offer sympathy. Instead, he slid a folder toward me. "Everything in here is publicly available," he said. "But people like Thomas count on you never thinking to look." I opened it. There was a scanned copy of a driver's license. Thomas, but not Thomas Parker. Thomas Green. Issued in Jackson, Mississippi. Next to that a marriage license. Issued 5 years before ours. "Is this real?" I asked, but my voice came out hollow. Nathan nodded. "Double identities aren't as uncommon as you'd think, especially for men in consulting fields. They build lives like portfolios." I flipped to the next document. Property records. A small house in Jackson, registered under Thomas Green and Amanda Green. My stomach turned. He used a different social security number when applying for utilities in Austin. Nathan said calmly. "Not illegal by itself, but questionable, especially if he declared you as a dependent under the other name." I stared at the paper. At the date. 6 months before our wedding. Nathan leaned back, watching me read. Not intruding. Just waiting. The traffic outside buzzed like nothing inside this booth was collapsing. I reached the last page, a printed email header, from a private account. The subject line: "If she finds out, shut it down." No body. Just the subject. "He was talking about me," I whispered. Nathan didn't confirm. He didn't need to. I felt my hands go still. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel afraid. I felt awake. Nathan reached into the side pocket of his folder. This time he didn't slide the paper across. He placed it gently, like it deserved its own weight. A photograph. Thomas. No, Thomas Green. Standing in front of a modest brick house. One hand resting on the shoulder of a smiling blonde woman. The other holding a small boy, no older than 5. A girl stood by the steps, a red backpack slung over her tiny frame. I didn't speak. Didn't breathe. But something inside me folded. Nathan's voice was quiet. "That's Amanda Green. His wife. Legally. Jackson County, Mississippi." He let the name hang in the air like smoke. I studied the photo again. Same eyes, same watch, same curve of the smile he used when he wanted me to stop asking questions. But my mouth opened, then closed. How? He married you under Thomas Parker, Nathan said, flipping open a compact state record. But never dissolved his first marriage. In the state of Mississippi, that's a felony. I touched the edge of the photo. It was warm from his hand. Are those his kids? Nathan didn't answer, not verbally. He opened another document, a school registration form for the little girl. Parent signature Amanda Green. Emergency contact Thomas Green. That was all I needed. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. Instead, I folded the photo, tucked it into my coat pocket, and stood. Nathan stood too, watching me carefully. What now? I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone older, sharper. Now, he said. You decide what you want the ending to be. I looked out the window. The cars kept moving. The world kept spinning. And in that moment, it all came down to one truth I couldn't ignore: I wasn't his wife. I was just his exit strategy. Turns out I wasn't his wife. I was just his exit strategy. Can love exist without truth? Drop A if you've learned the answer the hard way. He didn't leave me for Amanda. He didn't even pretend to. He just kept me, like a spare key, like a name on a folder he might need again. That realization settled into my chest heavier than grief. Because grief, at least, implies something once lived. Ever been someone's backup plan without knowing? Comment. Plan B. If this hit close to home, Sarah Whitman's office didn't smell like fear. It smelled like cedar and copy toner. The kind of place where calm was a resource you could borrow by the hour. She had a small lamp on the side table, one of those old-fashioned banker's ones with a green shade. And next to it a framed quote that read, "Truth doesn't need to raise its voice." Nathan had already briefed her. When I arrived, she simply stood, nodded once, and gestured to the chair across from hers. "There's no handbook for your situation," she said gently, "but we've handled fraud cases, bigamy, identity theft. Yours is layered." I sat, clasping my hands tighter than I realized. Nathan, beside me, spread out the documents. The dual marriage licenses. The property listings under 2 names. The forged mental health report from Austin Mental Wellness Center. Bank transactions to a doctor. Samuel Cortez marked. Consulting fee. Sarah skimmed them like someone flipping through old receipts. Her eyebrows lifted only once, at the diagnosis Thomas had arranged under my name. Inconsistent perception. Early delusional disorder, she read aloud, then looked at me. You don't seem inconsistent to me. I didn't smile. But I did breathe, slowly. He tried to have me committed, I said. Or at least discredited. Sarah tapped her pen lightly. Which means we go quiet, but move fast. First, we freeze joint assets. Then, file dual state fraud action. Louisiana and Mississippi. She turned her monitor toward me. It showed a form with my name on it. And in the marital status field, contested, fraudulent consent. That was the legal phrase for, he lied about who he was before you said yes. I read it 3 times. I didn't shake. Didn't cry. I nodded. Proceed. The court building in downtown Baton Rouge wasn't tall. It didn't need to be. Justice didn't always live in towers. It sometimes worked in rooms with bad carpet and humming fluorescent lights. We entered through a side door. Nathan held it open without a word. Sarah walked ahead with a leather folder tucked beneath her arm like a shield. It was the first time I'd stepped into a government building without feeling small. This time, I had evidence. This time, I had purpose. The clerk at the civil filing window looked up as Sarah approached. "Emergency injunction?" Sarah said. "Fraudulent marital consent. Dual filing request. Louisiana and Mississippi." The woman blinked, then typed quickly. "Supporting documents." Nathan handed them over. His fingers were steady. A few feet away, I stood still, one hand on the post, it note in my coat pocket. Scribbled the night before, alone in the hotel room. He wanted me to disappear. I'm giving him what he wants, just not how he imagined. The clerk stamped the forms. Each thud was oddly satisfying. Sarah turned back to me. We'll hear back within 72 hours on the injunction. Meanwhile, she slid me another set of papers. Bank freezes. Transfer prevention. A cease and desist order in draft. He can't access joint accounts once this is in, she said, and you'll be flagged as a vulnerable party, meaning no changes to property titles or insurance unless cleared. I signed. Every page. No hesitation. That evening, I sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, laptop open. Notes everywhere, yellow, pink, even a torn napkin from lunch with a scribbled court date. Nathan had gone quiet after dinner. He said he'd be driving to Jackson in the morning to speak with Amanda. I won't show her the file unless she asks, he said. But she deserves to know who's been living in her house. And yours. I nodded. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened the voice memo app on my phone. Scrolled to the oldest one Thomas forgot to delete. She's convenient. That's it. Once the mental paperwork clears, she's out. His voice. My kitchen. 3 weeks before the New Orleans trip, I didn't flinch. I uploaded it. Renamed the file Exit Strategy. WAV, and I sent it to Sarah. Use if needed, I wrote. No emojis, no signatures. Just a woman documenting the beginning of the end, on her own terms. The call came at 8:41 a.m. Sarah's voice was clipped, but clear. Judge signed the emergency injunction this morning, she said. Accounts frozen. Property held. We've filed notice to both state registries. I didn't say anything. But I sat down. And for the first time in weeks, my knees didn't feel hollow. Thomas has been served, she added. His office wouldn't confirm if he came in today. But the process server said he looked blindsided. I pictured it. Him in that gray blazer. The same one he wore to our anniversary dinner last year. Reading a notice that unraveled his plans line by line. Hayes going to hide, Nathan said later, when we met briefly outside the courthouse. That's what men like him do when they lose control. I looked down at the phone in my hand. Still no missed calls, no texts, no apology, no attempt. He wasn't trying to fix it. He was trying to vanish before it all caught up. Back at the hotel, I opened the curtains. The sun hit the coffee table and the stack of yellow post, its curling slightly at the edges. I rewrote the same line I'd been repeating every day since I left the gas station. Soft doesn't mean weak. Because for a long time, he mistook my quiet for surrender, my patience for passivity, my willingness to believe for blindness. He thought I'd beg, that I'd break, but softness, real softness, knows how to hold its shape. It bends, it adjusts, it waits for the storm to pass. Then it rises, without sound, without warning. I wasn't trying to be loud. I was trying to be free. He thought I'd stay soft. He forgot softness bends. It doesn't break. Would you rather be betrayed privately, or exposed publicly with justice? Let's hear it Pirivae or Pew Bell likes. I never got my old life back. I didn't want it anymore. The court hearing was short. The kind of short that comes when evidence folds in on itself. When lies unravel with their own weight. Thomas stood between two public defenders in a gray suit that didn't fit as well as it used to. I didn't sit in the front row. I didn't speak. Amanda pled guilty before he did. 7 years for him, 3 for her. Fraud, bigamy, manipulation of medical records, false insurance claims, no contest. Outside, reporters waited by the courthouse steps, notebooks and microphones ready. I passed them with sunglasses on and nothing to say. I didn't need a headline. I already had closure. That evening I signed the papers to sell the Austin house. White roof, rose garden, polished floors. Gone. A home is only beautiful if you feel safe inside it. I moved to Mobile, Alabama 2 weeks later. My new place was small, a pale yellow cottage with chipped window frames and a porch that faced the ocean, not the road. I liked that. It made me feel like the house had chosen a different kind of life too. The wicker chair out front creaked in rhythm with the wind. The sea was always nearby. You couldn't always see it, but you could hear it in the hush between sentences. The first time I walked into the community center, I thought I'd turn back. The word, support group, still made my stomach twist. but a woman with silver braids and kind eyes said, "Coffee's free, and we don't ask your name unless you want to share it." Her name was Gloria. She'd left a man in Mississippi who used silence like a knife. I liked her instantly. That Tuesday evening, I listened to 5 women tell their stories. No drama. No pity. Just the steady unfolding of pain, and how it no longer defined them. When it was my turn, I took a breath. I wasn't a wife, I said. I was a placeholder. No one gasped. No one judged. Gloria just nodded slowly and poured more coffee into my chipped white mug. Have you ever started your life over? Completely. If yes, comment. Chapter 1. If not, still on the page. The next morning, a letter was waiting at the front door. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't dramatic. Just a small manila envelope with a return address I didn't recognize. Inside, a folded note and a photo. The note said, "Don't know if this helps or hurts, but I figured you deserved to see it. It was Ethan." The photo was a snapshot, slightly blurred, of Thomas standing alone in a parking lot. No Amanda. No suit. Just a worn jacket and a cigarette halfway burned down. His posture was different. Not the confident man who used to dominate dinner parties with fake stories and practiced laughter. This man looked like a shadow that had lost the body it belonged to. I folded the photo and placed it in the bottom drawer. Not to keep it, just to bury it, properly this time. That night, I went to dinner at Ethan's mother's house. Linda lived in a clapboard house near the edge of town. The air smelled like fried catfish and clean laundry. Her porch had 2 hanging plants that looked half dead but somehow still bloomed. When she opened the door, she didn't say, "Welcome." She said, "Hope you're hungry. I made extra hush puppies." There was no pity in her voice. No probing questions. Just warmth. Quiet, Old South, real kindness warmth. Ethan was there too, fixing a loose hinge on her kitchen cabinet. He gave me a sideways glance and a small nod. Later, as we sat around the table, me, Linda, Ethan, a bowl of mashed potatoes, I felt something shift in my chest. Not love. Not yet. But safety. I didn't need fireworks. I needed a roof that didn't echo with accusation. Back at my cottage that night, I sat on the porch. The wind carried in briny air from the Gulf. Gloria had given me a leather-bound journal after the group meeting. Blank pages, no instructions. I opened it. Wrote the date. Then this. I never needed revenge. I needed the truth to be louder than the lie. That sentence was mine. Not Thomas's. Not Amanda's. Not anyone's. I sat with it. Let the truth settle into the bones of the evening. Then I smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in months. Not because I was healed, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. The next few weeks passed like slow tides. I started volunteering at the local library, organizing paperbacks, recommending mysteries to women who liked justice with their tea. Sometimes, Gloria from the support group would stop by and slide a cookie across the counter, no words needed. Other times I just sat on the porch, same wicker chair, same ocean breeze. Different woman. One Tuesday morning, an official envelope came in the mail. Final court documents, stamped, closed, irrevocable. Thomas Green, 7 years for bigamy and fraud. Amanda, 3, with probation. Asset division finalized. My name, cleared. I held the paper in my hands. Didn't cry. Didn't cheer. I just exhaled like I hadn't breathed properly in years. I never responded to the journalists. Never gave a quote. Let them chase the story while I watered my porch plants and read novels from the free bin. One evening, Ethan sent me a message. Not a question, not a proposal. Just this. Porch lights always on. Just in case. I didn't reply right away. I folded the message, placed it in the same drawer where I buried the photo of Thomas. Not because I was holding on, but because reminders come in all forms. Some to forget. Some to remember who you are when you finally come home to yourself. That night, I locked the gate outside my cottage. Not out of fear. Out of peace. Because when you've walked through the kind of fire I did, you don't need to keep checking for smoke. You know exactly where it burns, and where it can never touch again. If you made it this far, thank you. Truly. Tell me, who helped you walk out when you couldn't stand alone? I'll be reading. I don't miss my old life. I miss who I thought I was in it. But some illusions are worth shedding, so we can finally stand in our own light. Sometimes, the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who silence you the slowest. But the truth, no matter how buried, has a way of finding air. And when it doesn't just free you. It rebuilds you. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear your voice in the comments. There's always space here for stories that learn to breathe again.